Welcome back to Jacques in the garden. Today, I'm coming at you literally sitting in the garden because it feels so good over here. All these mature plants have really grown in. They were planted over the past month or two, and it's really starting to come together. But there are always some hidden pockets throughout the garden that definitely need some work. Now on this side, honestly, not too bad. There are a couple major projects here, like turning in this cover crop, trimming back my grape, and some of the other perennial stuff on the corners here. But there's one little thing hiding in that bed over there that I want to take care of today. And on the other side of the garden and in my greenhouse, things are looking a little bit rough. So we need to clean all that out. Then we'll come back tomorrow and I'll actually talk about my plan for those places and maybe even get most of them planted out. So let's get started by looking for that giant surprise I have hiding in the bed right back over there. As I was heading over to that raised bed, I noticed this field of nasturtiums. You could see it all the way down the fence line. I have a nice little patch of it here. And this is basically what we're working with here in San Diego. Nasturtiums love it here, and they essentially become weeds. All the seeds that were dropped throughout the season have now 100% sprouted. And in a single square foot, I probably have about 40 nasturtiums. So if you've ever asked me for advice on how to grow nasturtiums, just know that I definitely have an unfair advantage on that one. But that's not the point of today's video. Let's head on back to that raised bed. First, I just have to mention how beautiful that red metromorph marigold is on the edge there, popping against that blue bed with this wonderful orange zinnia up front. It is a match made in heaven, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for this disgusting mess back here. Powdery mildew infested summer squash. Now, the plant just looks rough at this point. I don't think anyone harvested it while I was gone. By the way, I was gone for 14 days and I'm now coming back to the garden. I'm surprised it looks as good as it looks, but somebody obviously didn't know that there was a summer squash here. Pretty big one. I guess that's what they would call a marrow over on the East Coast there. So yeah. Probably won't eat this. I could ostensibly bake it and it might end up okay. That's usually what you do with squash or marrow when they get to this size. But it's definitely gonna have a very hollow cavity. So you would scoop that out and basically make a giant zucchini boat, or I could just make a lot of zucchini bread. So I'm gonna set this guy aside. I'll think about whether he's going to be eaten or not. But what I do want to do is remove this powdery mildew mess, and that will open up another spot or two to plant something else. Currently, I have mostly just cauliflower in here and a little bit of green chard at the end there. And I might actually expand that chard because in the winter time, when you have less sun, you actually don't get as much production as you would think because you're so used to harvesting things in the springtime when there's lots of sunlight hours, things grow really quickly and happy. But something like a green chard would probably grow at about 1/3 of the production that it does in the spring or summertime. So I think expanding my green selection would be great. But for now, let's get all this squash out of here and we'll move over to the other side of the garden because that's where the heavy lifting really is. Now, welcome to the north garden. Right over there is the greenhouse that is a disaster. I'm saving that for last today because I don't want to start there. Over here, we're not going to even talk about it, but right smack dab in the middle with this crazy overgrown basil covered in flowers and a bunch of dying pepper plants, this is an area that needs some love. Now, out of all the peppers, what I've noticed every single year without fail is that the family of peppers, the Capsicum chinensium, I can never pronounce that right, is the one that usually has smaller leaves. That one does extremely well here, especially as it gets close to the winter. So you'll see an insanely loaded biquinho pepper, but I'll show you in a moment. But the rest of them, the standard kind of bell variety, all of those have really given up. They don't look good at all. They're basically just like a dead stick with a couple flowers, a couple leaves, and they probably also have the dreaded root knot nematode, although this one seems to be safe. So what I want to do here is clean all this out. We also have to clean up this trellis here because it's currently covered in dead runner beans. And I'll show you some of the things in here that I'm definitely going to be saving or maybe even leaving in the ground for just a touch longer. As you guys can see, this is absolutely loaded. It might be like 1,000 biquinho peppers here. I have both the orange and the red variety, and they just look beautiful. The plant itself looks happy and healthy. There's obviously plenty of fruit production, so you know that that's a happy pepper plant. And the other one back here that you could see a lot of red on at least, that is the Chileano pepper. I got it from the Seed Savers Exchange, and that has also always done really well here in my climate. Now the rest of these, as I mentioned, they're looking a little bit rough. There's a couple random things in here, So I'm gonna get this basil cleaned out, get work on this side, and pop over to that other pepper bed, and there's plenty of harvesting to do in there. So we'll see how many peppers we end up with. So clearly I did not entirely clean this area out. I left in the bikini peppers. I also left in that eggplant that was actually a volunteer. Some of the flowers, including all the marigolds on the back edge there. So it's not a full clean out, but tomorrow we could reassess it. But this is what I pulled out of here. Honestly, not that much. I did get a couple really nice mature bells. In this case, this one was harvested as a green one, but you can see there's a little tint of red on it. So you know it's at least at its peak ripeness. Now, the other thing that I did actually set aside and save were some of the sweet peppers that already had started to wrinkle. They're fully ripe. They've already begun to essentially dry out. And what I want to do with these guys, the ones that are already kind of looking a little bit sad, here's what it basically looks like now. You could see it's starting to actually dry down and wrinkle. These are the ones I'm going to set aside, and I'm going to just fully dry them and try to make some pepper powder out of it. At this point, it's already essentially halfway to dry, so why not just throw it in a dehydrator and see what we get? So that's it for the peppers, at least for today. But now what I want to tackle is the trellis back there that, as I mentioned, is covered in runner beans, and there should be a decent amount of dry ones that can't be harvested, and I'll show you what those look like. So that right there is the scarlet runner bean. You could see that it is a very, very beautiful bean, and these are a wonderful soup bean. They're actually a very large bean. As you can see, they're already quite large in their fully dry state, and they will hydrate beautifully. They'll get about maybe 2 to 3 times the size that they already are. But the really beautiful thing about this bean when it comes to cooking is that it doesn't fall apart. So when you cook it, even for a long period of time, it's not going to start breaking apart and becoming part of the soup. They will remain plump, and the outer skin is a little bit thick, but it is so much fun to eat something like this because instead of it just being mush, it's actually full of flavor and texture. My mouth is even watering a little bit. I'm definitely a bean fan over here. So what I want to do is harvest the rest of these mature dried pods. I'll add it to the pile I already have that's in the shed. I'll show you that as well. And then the second thing I want to talk about here is the pros and cons of a permanent trellis. Now in this case, this was one that was made with conduit, and what this is paracord. Now paracord is UV rot resistant. It can last outside in the direct elements for years on end and not really suffer any problems. In fact, this paracord has now been here for I think at least 3 years, and it's still standing strong. The downside is when it comes to removing plants, you can't just rip the whole thing off and throw it in the green bin or your compost pile. Instead, you have to meticulously break and separate all this plant material off of every single string, because the advantage of it is that it lasts year after year and you can reuse it without having to set it up every single time. So just wanted to point that out there in case you're thinking about your future trellis. That is the pros and cons of a permanent system. But now what I want to do is go through and pull all these beans, and then we'll venture into the greenhouse. Sorry guys, it's getting dark, but I did want to show you the stash in the shed here. I've got tons and tons of dry beans. Got another one back here, another pile of them on the table. So definitely some beans in my future. And also, in case you didn't notice, this is also where I do the Epic Gardening podcast, The Beat, where I talk to a lot of different gardeners all over the world, different people in the space. It's a really fun conversation where I get really deep and extended, usually up to an hour. So if you're looking for more of that, I will put a link down in the comments. But now let's go over to the greenhouse, because that thing is basically a full teardown inside. Welcome to my greenhouse, which has become a jungle, but not the best jungle out there. A lot of it is dying because I have neglected this space over the past couple months. I'd say basically since the end of July to now, I have given this zero love, and it does show. Now, a lot of the things that did really, really well for me in the early spring and summer were the tomatoes. I have a cucumber back here, the peppers, the strawberries, fantastic production. But then I just kind of stopped adding stuff to it, and the only things that really did well are the tropicals. So this is a ginger plant. It is doing phenomenally. There's actually 2 of them in this greenhouse. The best ginger I've ever had by far. You'll see more of that tomorrow. The lemongrass, of course, is just going absolutely bananas. Really tall, thick stalks. It will be great for cooking. And also the guavas, the mango, even a banana in the back there that's desperate to get planted outside where it has a little bit more growing space. Those did just fine. So everything else, I just kind of left it in here. I never even added shade cloth this year. I'm surprised that most of the plants didn't just die. Now this one did die, but it is a year old. I actually planted it around this time 1 year ago today. And so now it's time for it to go out. So let's get started there. We'll get all this dead stuff out of here. I might show you some of the weird stuff that is probably hiding back here. But then tomorrow we'll take a closer look at all the healthy plants and talk about how I plan to use this space throughout the winter, because I definitely do have some plants. Now for a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Bombas. I'm actually currently wearing 2 items from them. One is my wool socks, which I absolutely love. And one of my new favorites is their Modal Cotton Blend Boxer Briefs, which I can't show you, but I can assure you are quite comfortable. Now, Bombas is a purpose-driven company. They've donated over 150 million articles of clothing, and they make the 3 most requested items: socks, underwear, and shirts, and those are what they donate. When you buy one, they give one. So that is the amazing brand behind this, but they also do make other things like the amazing and comfortable Sunday slippers. Now, Bombas makes a variety of different slippers, but the Sunday slipper is my favorite because it has that hard bottom. I put these on every morning and have my cup of coffee with Cosmo right in these chairs, and they are great. The hard bottom resists things like wood chips or straw mulch from sticking to your slippers, which you then bring into your house. And I also wear them while I'm cooking, which allows me to walk into the garden and do a little late night harvesting for dinner whenever I need to. But if you're looking for a purely indoor slipper, they have the gripper slipper, which pulls on just like a sock. And as an added bonus, you could throw it into the wash just like your socks, so they never get that dirty. But if you're looking for something even more simple than that, they make the Nest slipper, which has a shorter toe cup up front and none of this heel cup in the back. It's just a classic slip-on slipper, and you're ready to go right out of the shower into your bedroom, fully comfortable. So check out Bombas, try some of their slippers today. And remember, with every purchase that you make, they will be donating an item of clothing to somebody in need, which is why I love Bombas so much, besides the fact that they also make really comfortable stuff. So let's get back into the garden. I'll put some shoes back on and we'll get a little dirty. As planned, we will be back tomorrow to discuss the future plans of all these spaces, and even this one I won't be able to get to today because it's apparently just about dinner time. So I'll see you guys tomorrow and we'll get into these future plans. All right guys, here is the greenhouse after some cleaning. Obviously I did some throughout the night last night, but I won't say that I'm done here. There's definitely another round of cleaning, a little bit of trash and stuff to pick through. I want to wash some of this dirt away into the gravel. And there are still some containers in here that I don't think are productive, but the main ones that are for sure unproductive are out of the greenhouse now. So I think I took out about 6 grow bags. I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 peppers here are probably not going to be worth keeping. This one that's taller, for sure, I think I will try to continue it into the winter and see what it does. But the main use for the greenhouse over the true winter period for me is going to be 2 cherry tomatoes. I have one in a small pot here that needs to get potted up into at least a 15-gallon. Another one here in the 5-inch pot. I also have 5 peppers that are quite young and already branching. So I want to pot those into 10 gallons and just see what they do over the winter in the greenhouse. Now I'm not going to provide any supplemental light or heat. So realistically, I don't think they'll actually do that well because the main thing that they won't be getting is enough sunlight. But the other stuff I'm leaving in here is this ginger. I'll bring you in close in a second, but this is already essentially at the harvest window. It already has its ginger flowers, which are weeping with juice. It smells really good, actually. It's this weird kind of gingery tea smell, but this is a honkin' ginger plant underground. I also have a second one back here behind the lemongrass. And so the lemongrass, the ginger, the peppers, and the tomatoes for sure are staying, as well as these tropical perennials. So I have a Barbados cherry here, which has grown quite a bit this year. So hopefully next year I'll get plenty of fruit production out of it. I also have the mango and 2 guavas. Those will stay, but the banana tree itself needs to come out. There's just no way it could get as big as it wants to get inside this greenhouse. If you guys have seen bananas before, you know that they're taller than this. They basically want to go probably at least 10 feet unless you have a dwarf variety. So this is just not a good long-term solution, but I have kept it alive and it is making a second pup. So now is a great time to plant it somewhere outside. The mango tree is getting a bit tall. I haven't quite decided what I want to do with that yet, but for now it's going to be staying in the greenhouse. So peppers, tomatoes, lemongrass, tropicals, and also I need to refresh the strawberry tower. That's kind of it for this time of the year. I will of course be doing all my seeds starting in here and trying to get ahead because I am playing around with the portable greenhouse outside in the garden. So I want to get some peppers and tomatoes started a little bit earlier this year. So that's the basic plan for the greenhouse itself. Now let's pop out back to the garden and talk about those other areas that I cleaned up. All right, so what are we gonna do with this side of the garden? Well, first of all, both of these beds are roughly 3 by 10 feet. So you could get quite a few plants in them. I know I could get probably about 100 plus garlic in each bed, but I do have one plan for garlic, which is to put it in the big patch over yonder. So if I don't put garlic here, what will I put? Well, I have more brassicas. So broccolis, cabbages, cauliflowers, kales, greens, all those sort of things. I still have plenty of seedlings on my bench that could easily pop into any one of these places. So the plan is to fully harvest this out. And the only reason I waited is because I need some time set aside so I could turn all of these biquinho peppers and these chilanos into a fermented hot sauce. Now, these don't have a lot of heat on their own, the biquinos that is, but they pack a crazy amount of flavor in such a small little pepper that they are always worth turning into hot sauce. So for added heat, I have a raised bed back there that has the ají lemon peppers, which definitely pack a punch. So I'll be blending all those together with these chilano peppers behind me to make a wonderful hot sauce that I could also give out as gifts if I end up with too much. Now there's also that eggplant back there. And the interesting thing about that eggplant is that it is the Anea eggplant, the one I normally grow that has the stripy white and purple look, except I did not plant that one. So that is one that grew on its own, I think from probably a composted eggplant. So I want to save seed from that one to try to stabilize that line. The fact that it looks the same and we've ate from it, it tastes the same, but it was a hybrid variety originally is really interesting to me because it might mean that I have a stable sort of potential open pollinated line of that eggplant that I could start propagating myself. So what I want to do is wait for that eggplant to sort of turn that yellowish kind of creamy color, which is when it's past maturity, and that's when the seed is best to be harvested. So that is the plan with this bed. Harvest all those guys, fully remove all the plants, and then add a lot of slow release organic fertilizer and compost to these beds because neither of them have been amended in quite some time, and they both were grown with peppers and tomatoes, which are very, very hungry plants. So I could either fill these with brassicas once that's all gone, or I could plant some garlic here. Both of those options are still up in the air. I have a seedling table full of brassicas to play with, but let me show you, I have 2 more beds back on this side that will need to get flipped, and one more actually right where the camera is. You know, I've never filmed this early in the morning on this side of the garden, and I could see why, because the shadow to light contrast is pretty wild. But what I wanted to show you here is this raised bed, which has a couple peppers in it, some really nice sized peppers, and also the last of my Anea eggplant. Just kidding, it's not the last of it because I have this entire hugelkultur mound loaded with eggplant. Now the eggplant has slowed its production down quite substantially now that we're actually getting deep into that fall season. So I don't think there's much left on that season of that bed. So once I get one more harvest, I'll happily remove it all, and then that will get planted with most likely brassicas. Since it's in a hugel mound, I don't know why, but I don't want to put garlic there. I don't know, something about it feels weird. And then the last bed that I mentioned is the one back here, which is where the ají lemon pepper is. So that's what this guy looks like. It's a nice, this one's actually harvested a little bit early, but it's a nice yellow pepper, packs quite a punch, and it should make for a very flavorful hot sauce. So peppers, eggplant, and a little bit of peppers. And then finally, we are free from the last of the summer season, and we are 100% locked in to the fall. Now there's one more part of this garden, which is the trellis over here. So let's talk about a couple options for what to do with that through the winter. So here we are, we've got our trellis, and what are we going to do with it in the fall and winter? Well, your options are limited, especially if you have a slanted trellis like this, because the only thing I could really think of right now that is ideal for this season are climbing flowers, most of which are perennials or things like nasturtiums, which I have plenty of around the garden, or things like peas and sweet peas. Now, those will do great. In fact, this is a pretty ideal season for them. The only problem is that they don't like to grow at an angle. They like to grow vertically, and they send little tendrils out to grab onto whatever's next to them. So no big deal. What I have to do instead is when I plant them, I'll plant them inside of the trellis, so at least it starts underneath one of these lines. And whenever I have one of these horizontal lines, I'm going to just force the pea underneath it, so that way when it goes vertically again, I can force underneath the next one, and that should keep it all locked and loaded inside of this trellis. So that's kind of my plan for the fall winter. Peas, sweet peas, vining flowers. I can't really think of anything else that's classically grown at this time that would benefit from a trellis. Now, the other option, of course, is that you don't trellis anything and you just plant things all around it and you just let them grow as they would anywhere else and just lose out on the vertical space for this one time of year. that's perfectly fine option, especially since things grow slowly at this time of year. Just use whatever space you have and don't be too precious about it. So now let's pop over to the other garden, the south garden. I'll give you the last kind of layout in there. Since I mentioned the seedlings, I figured I might as well show them to you. And I've got to say, I'm showing them to you because I am so proud of them. They look so good. I mean, look at this broccoli here. That is a beautiful seedling. I would pay good money for that at any nursery. The kale looks like true kale plants, not just little baby seedlings. So I've got a lot of options here, a lot of different broccolis, cabbages, brassicas, greens, you name it. But the other thing I really want to talk about are the onions. Now, as I showed you guys in the past, when I start my onion seeds, I do like to sow them very, very densely. So in one 6-cell like this, I gotta say I probably have about 60 onions. Now, onions grow very slowly. These onions were started at the same time as these to give you a little bit of context on how big those plants are. So if you didn't start your onions yet, it is too late, I will say, for a fall or winter planting. Of course, you could do it in the springtime. You'll just get smaller onions, totally fine. But if you still have space in your garden and you can grow through this season, I would highly encourage that you just buy some starts online. The place I've done it before is Dixondale Farms. They sell onion seedlings basically like this, already separated from the soil. You order them by like the dozen and you just pop them right into the ground and they are ready to go and they grow. And they're not even really that expensive. I think it's like maybe $3 a dozen, maybe even just $2 a dozen. And you get a lot of onions out of those couple bucks. So if you do want to grow onions, check that out. But if you did grow them from seed, get ready because I will probably be planting them sometime around mid to late November. As soon as I get these potted into the 16 cells and see a root out the bottom, at that point I feel pretty confident in getting them in the garden. So that's the seedling update. Pretty happy about it. Got a lot of options. So all this space that I've opened up is ready to go. So here we are back in the south garden, and what do we still have to do here? Well, the main thing is I have to replant that area I pulled that squash out of. It's just 2 plants and that bed is fully locked and loaded for the rest of the fall season. And then the other major project is I have this mustard cover crop here, which needs to get chopped, dropped, and tilled into the soil. In this case, I do want to incorporate it fully into the soil so I could help knock out some of those nematode pressures and fungal diseases. And at this point, it's ready because as soon as it starts to produce its flowers, that is the signal that it's ready to be terminated and worked into your soil. Outside of that, I have a little bit of perennial work on the edges, like the trees back here need some pruning, the grape needs to get pruned back, but mostly this garden is looking good. It is so full and right on the edge of production. I could see little baby broccolis on their way, so I am very excited for the coming fall harvest. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time, and let me know what's going on in your garden down in the comments below.